Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a couple minutes. We're just going to give other people some time to join. I'm in New York with some nice weather after several days of not nice weather. I hope you all have a similar thing going on wherever you are. Just a couple more minutes give some people a little extra time. I appreciate all the early birds though. Although now it's officially 12, so no more early. All right. I'm just cutting some green beans over here. Getting a little prep started. Okay. All right, it's officially 12:01. So if anyone comes after this, they can catch up. But welcome everyone to our cooking demo today. My name's Chef Michelle. I am head of the culinary team at Season, and I'm really excited to be showing you all this really delicious recipe that we developed. It's a mustard garlic salmon with a green bean rice pilaf. And I can talk about any of those ingredients and all of those ingredients. I'll give you some cooking tips, some knife skill lessons. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. If you're not familiar with Zoom, at the bottom, there should be some options for you to click into a chat. It looks like a little speech bubble, and you can go ahead and type your question in there. If it's anything cooking related, one of our Season team members is on the call and is going to moderate and call out those questions because I won't be able to see them while I'm cooking and chopping. If there's anything nutrition related that you guys have questions about, we do have at least 2 registered dietitians on the call, seasoned dietitians, so they will answer those questions at the end of the call. Any other questions you might have, please feel free to put them in the chat box. And just to let you all know, this meeting is being recorded, but all names, pictures, all of that private information is not being recorded. It's just me. So with that, I'm going to get started. I'm going to tilt my camera down so you all can see my setup because that'll be more interesting to look at, obviously. Okay. So first up, anytime you're going to get ready for cooking, obviously you read the whole recipe. I have at my home printed out the season recipe, which I have here. Our first tip is to just read through your whole recipe, make sure you have all of your ingredients readily available, and you feel comfortable with moving forward with the recipe. Second thing I do is I get a nice big cutting board. I also use rubber cutting boards. Really, it's totally personal preference. Next thing you want to have is a knife. This is a large chef's knife, but really what we recommend is to use a knife that you're comfortable with. The only knife that I wouldn't recommend chopping everything with is a serrated knife, which also like a bread knife that looks like this. This is, I wouldn't recommend chopping with this. It can get a little dangerous, but otherwise really whatever knife you have at home that you feel comfortable with is great. Another thing that I make sure to arm myself with is a small bowl used for garbage. And there's two reasons for this. Number one is you always want to keep your cooking area as clean as possible. And that's for sanitary reasons, to make sure that the food you're preparing and eating is clean and safe for you to eat. But it also just makes it a lot easier. If you've ever tried to work in a cluttered environment and you have a million things on your cutting board and you're chopping in this little corner, it's just a recipe for disaster. So keeping it clean is always what's recommended. And also, if your garbage isn't directly next to you while you're cooking, it saves you a trip to wherever your garbage is. So a little handy garbage bowl is great to have. With my kitchen setup, I'll just give you guys a bit of a quick knife skill lesson, because knife safety is extremely important whenever you're in the kitchen. So when you're holding a knife, obviously I'm using my dominant hand, which is my right hand. And what you want to do is pinch the bottom of the blade here with your thumb and your forefinger. And then you want to wrap your remaining fingers around the actual handle of the knife. So the reason that we instruct people to do this is many people hold the knife like this, which great if you're comfortable with that. However, when you're chopping, you can see it's a little bit loose. It kind of can like get a little messy. So by adding that extra pinch grip, you're ensuring that the knife is really an extension of your hand and you can have a lot more control over it. So holding the knife this way is how we recommend to hold it for best practice. Second most important thing is to protect your hand that is not holding the knife. So this hand is often maybe holding whatever object you're about to cut. Most people probably aren't like cooking with one hand tied behind their back. So this hand is always involved in some capacity. And we want to make sure that you're protecting your hand. Obviously, you don't want to have a bad mistake there. So you want to curl your fingertips underneath the rest of your hand, kind of like a bear claw. And this will prevent you from obviously getting with your knife, the tips of your fingers. So when you're cutting, if you bang into your knuckles, hopefully that's the worst that will happen as opposed to your fingertips. That's really the basics of knife skills. With that, I'm going to move into our delicious seasoned recipe for the day. So first thing I did was I preheated my oven to 425 degrees. We always instruct that as the first thing you do so that your oven is heating while you're kind of getting your other ingredients ready. So next thing I have are some green beans. And what I'm going to do with these green beans is trim the ends of them. So sometimes the ends can be a little dry. Sometimes they have a bit of a stem that is a little bit tough and just not fun to eat. It's really not, it's not dangerous for you to eat it by any means, but it's a little bit chewier. So it looks like this sometimes with this little stem. So by just trimming the ends, it makes it more enjoyable. And so one of our recipe tips is that we ask you to line up all the green beans all in one direction. And if you are a lefty and you're cutting with your left hand, you would align them all to the left side, but I'm a righty. So they're aligned all to the left. And then I'm just going to go in pinching my knife, protecting these hands as much as I can, but I also have to hold the green beans intact. And I'm just going to trim off just the ends, not too much, just to get that dry and stem part off. And I'm putting them in my handy garbage bowl, and sometimes you may miss one, and that's okay. We're not perfect. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and you can kind of gather them, bang them all together, trim those stems, protecting my fingers, and putting that in the garbage. Okay, so now that these are trimmed, next thing I'm going to do is cut them into thirds. And each green bean is a different length, but you know, cooking is supposed to be fun and interpretive. So we're not trying to tell you exactly how many inches to cut for this particular recipe. So that's about a third, more or less. And I'm going to put that into my bowl that I have a bunch of other green beans prepped. And green beans are really easy to find in the supermarket. They're not super expensive. They're great because you can eat them raw if you enjoy that. In this recipe, they're cooked lightly. They are not, you know, we don't turn them into mush. Maybe some people like that. Some people enjoy that kind of texture, but we wanted to keep a little bit of texture in the recipe and the bright green color. The more you cook them, the more of that color they'll lose. Okay. And a great thing about green beans is that they're high in fiber. So great for your digestive system, filling, all the good stuff. Okay, so I got my green beans all prepped. I did some ahead of time, like I said, so got a big bowl going here. Next thing I'm gonna do is prep my lemon. So for this recipe, we give customers the option to zest the lemon if they want. And when you zest a lemon, you're going to use a tool like this. They look a little different, but really they just need these little grates that are sharp. A lot of times people will use this to grate some cheese. I sometimes will grate garlic on here if I'm too lazy to cut it or get out a cutting board. But here I'm going to zest up to half of the lemon. And the lemon zest really just adds a bright, tangy flavor to the recipe. However, it is extremely optional. So if you don't have a zester, if you don't feel like dirtying it, if you don't love the taste of lemon zest, it can be a little bitter sometimes. Totally leave it out. And at the end, you really just garnished the recipe with a squeeze of lemon juice to add a little bit of acidity and brightness. So that will do the trick. You don't need the zest. But I happen to like it. I think it adds a nice layer to the dish. So that's about half. And when you zest a lemon, if you've ever done this before, you don't want to go all the way down to the white part because that's when it starts to get really bitter. So just by grazing the top here, I went a couple times. You can see I didn't get a ton of zest, but that's perfect for me. I don't need any more than that. So I'm just going to put that off to the side. And be very careful, never clean against these grates with your finger. That's the sharp part. So I just cleaned it off this smooth part. Okay, and now I'm going to quarter the lemon. Like I said, this is for lemon wedges. So knife skills here, pinching the blade. I'm gonna have it through these two fingers. And then another knife tip is that when you are cutting something round, you want to make it as easy as possible for yourself. So this will work for an onion. This will work for any citrus, anything round, obviously. So once I halved it, I'm putting the cut side down. If I try to cut it on this rounded side, this could wobble, my knife could slip. It's just not a good idea. So now that I've halved it, cut side down, and I'm protecting my non-cutting hand, and I'm just cutting it once more to create these nice wedges. Okay. And like I said before, we always try to keep a clean workspace. So I'm just going to wipe this down a tiny bit, wipe my knife before I move on. And the last thing we have to prep for this recipe is garlic. So I have 3 garlic cloves here. 2 of them are rather large, so we'll see how we feel about it. Depends how much you like garlic. One of our chefs absolutely loves garlic and will write all of her recipes with as much garlic as possible. Obviously, we're always taking into consideration how much garlic you all actually like to eat and enjoy. We like it here at Season, but we temper that with, you know, trying to appeal to everyone. So I was able to take off that wrapper pretty easily. However, if you are not able to peel the garlic paper off, the best way to do it is to take your knife and put it parallel to the cutting board. And I'm sure you've seen this on cooking shows where people just whack the knife to break it, to break the garlic skin. And you can do that. I sometimes just press firmly, and it does the same thing without banging my knife so hard. I have to protect the knife and my hand, of course. So by banging it just a couple times, you saw I didn't go crazy there. It really just loosened the skin very easily. So you don't have to spend time unfolding all that paper. And I'll do the same with this smaller one. See, it comes off very easily. Okay. And next thing I'm going to do for this garlic is just trim off this little stem right here. It's not necessary. You can definitely eat that, especially if it's cooked. It'll soften, but why not? And so for this garlic preparation, we're going to mince it, which means very, very small pieces. And the reason for that is because this garlic cooks pretty quickly. And so we don't want you to eat a ton of raw garlic. If we put this whole garlic clove in and you only stir it around for a few minutes, someone's going to bite into the garlic. Maybe the outside would be softened, but the inside would be totally raw. So we want to mince it, make sure it's all mixed in nicely and cooked through. So to mince it, same thing that we just did to take the paper off. I'm going to smash it so that it's flat. And it's the same thought here as it was with the lemon, that the flatter it is, the less risky it is for you to cut. If I left it this whole and started to go at it with my knife, again, it could wobble all over. So by making it nice and flat, and this one's already flat, so we're ahead there. It's just way easier. And at this point, to mince garlic, I can rock my knife through the smushed pieces, and that's the technical culinary term. Just kidding. So I ran my knife through that and it got a very rough chop. If we ever instruct you to have a roughly chopped garlic, perhaps something's being blended into a sauce or it's being cooked for a longer period of time, this is what a rough chop would look like. But we want to go for a mince, like I said, which is very fine. And I'm going to add this one as well to the mince. So now at this point that I got the rough chop, I'm going to rock my knife through it. And so I have the tip of my knife is going to stay on the cutting board, and I have my hand here that's putting a little bit of weight on it so it doesn't move too much. And I'm rocking the base of the knife back and forth, scraping the garlic together to put it into one pile. And I'm cleaning it off carefully, scraping it off, not with the blade, with the back of the knife, gathering it together, and same thing, rocking back and forth. And I'm going a little bit faster here, but don't rush it. If you're doing this at home, take your time. Just for the sake of the demo, I want to make sure we get to everything. I'm going to go one or two more times, again, gathering, scraping, rocking. And you can apply this same motion when you're chopping up herbs like parsley or rosemary. And the reasoning for this is, first of all, you feel really cool doing it. But second of all, there's less friction, I want to say, on the actual item. So the more that I would chop this, the more the juices would leak out, the more I would get that garlic smell and flavor on my cutting board, on my knife, and it wouldn't retain it in the actual ingredient. And it's the same thing for herbs and parsley. If you don't want to bruise them and let all of those great aromas and oil leach out onto your cutting board, you want to maintain it in the ingredient itself. So by having that rocking motion, you're kind of just getting those swift cuts in and you can move on. Okay, so now that everything is prepped, we're gonna go ahead and prepare our salmon. I just need to grab it from my fridge. Okay, so here we have our 2 pieces of salmon. They look really good. And what I'm gonna do is make a topping. This topping is really key to the recipe. It brings in so much flavor, it brings in texture, and it's what makes the recipe unique. So in this bowl, I have a tablespoon of whole grain mustard. And if you don't know what that looks like, it looks like this. Oops, there's little seeds. And so those will add a little bit of texture to the dish as well. They have almost like a nutty flavor. It tastes like mustard, like a Dijon mustard, but a little bit milder almost, sometimes sweeter. So in that bowl, I added a teaspoon of olive oil. I'm taking about 1/3 of the garlic that we just minced, so I'm gonna just eyeball that. That looks like about 1/3. And then I'm doing 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. So I have my little measuring spoon here. And black pepper. And that's totally, black pepper is however you like it. If you don't like black pepper at all, it is absolutely not necessary. If you love it, great, go for it. So now I've stirred it together and it's become this paste. And this we're just going to put directly on the tops of the salmon here. So I'm just going to divide it, eyeball it again, about half. And then this is one of my favorite tools in my house, is this tiny spatula, which is just so cute. However, you can use your hands, you can use a spoon, whatever you use to stir the sauce, use that to spread it on the salmon, because the less dishes, the better. And that's it. That's all you do with the salmon. Now we're going to put it in the oven. And while that's cooking, we can move on to our rice.
Michelle, a question we received from a patient ahead of the event, I just wanted to ask for the group so they can hear your answer. So when someone's at the grocery store shopping for salmon, how can you tell if a piece is fresh or not?
That's a great question. So if you are shopping, say for a whole piece of fish, if you want to get really adventurous and cook a fish that hasn't been filleted yet, the key is really in the color of the eye of the fish, actually. And if the eye itself is, so just to give you a little, I don't know what you would call this, but concave means if something is if you imagine like a semicircle that's like dipped down, and convex as if it's rounded at the top, like a half moon. So if the eye is concave, sunken in and cloudy, that fish is not good. You want to look for eyes that still look like eyes, fresh eyes. So that half moon that's bubbled up and is clear, that's how you would buy a whole fish. For a fillet, the key is really the smell. And you can sometimes tell by looking at it, but it's really the feel of it. So I have a piece in my fridge that I trimmed off for the demo. I'll show you what it looks like so that you can tell what I'm talking about. And I'm just going to use a glove. So this piece of fish is fresh. If I press into the flesh, it is not breaking, it's not crumbling beneath my hands. Sometimes I've done it before where I've bought a fish that looked good, I brought it home, and this middle part of the flesh is totally like breaking between my fingers when I go to touch it. That's not a great sign. A lot of people say that fresh fish shouldn't smell like fish. That's not 100% true. It's still going to smell like fish. It just shouldn't smell fishy, if that makes sense. So if you can picture like leaving a piece of fish in your fridge for a day or two, that really intense, fishy, unpleasant smell, that's not what your fish should smell like. But if it smells like the ocean, if it smells like if you've ever had sushi and you kind of go into a sushi restaurant, it has that mild fish smell. That's totally fine. And you can always ask, if you are going to a fish counter, you can always ask, what's fresh? What is, you know, what did you just get today? And usually the folks working at the fish counter will tell you that. But that's a good question. Thank you for sharing. Okay. So now I'm going to get started on the rice pilaf. And I have my handy little burner here that I'm going to get going. And I have a pan. Let me just move that. Okay. So if anyone's not familiar with what a pilaf is, it is usually a rice dish that is cooked in some type of broth or stock or cooking liquid. And the goal is to have the grains of rice feel separate. So the opposite of like if you're making a sticky rice, you want it to feel light and fluffy and all the individual grains really be present. It's also often, you can throw an onion in there, you can throw garlic like we have today, vegetables, meat, there's a ton of different applications. And we take a little bit of a shortcut here today because it's easier and it's just as delicious. So I'll talk about that in a second. But first thing I'm gonna do is add some oil to our pan. And I'm adding just a teaspoon of oil here. And we're going to wait for that to heat up. In all of our recipes, we talk about when the oil is shimmering. And I want to see if I can kind of explain what that looks like to you guys here. So the reason why we say to wait until the oil is shimmering in the pan is because you want to add things to a hot pan. It's going to cook them in a more even way. You're going to spend less time waiting around stirring when is this thing going to finish cooking through. So by waiting until the pan is hot, it's definitely the most effective and you'll get the most flavor out of it if you wait until that as well. So by the way I'm swirling the oil around, you can see it's a little slow. The oil in the pan are still a little cold. Once it heats up, you'll see that when I tilt it, the oil will run a lot faster and it's going to get a little bit of a sheen that hopefully the camera will be able to pick up. So the shortcut I was talking about for the rice pilaf while we're waiting for the oil to heat is frozen brown rice. And I've measured it out already. We use this a ton in our recipes. It is pretty easy to find in most grocery stores. You can either put it in your microwave and just microwave it according to however the package instructs you. We tell you to put it on the stove with a little bit of water to just help infuse a little moisture into it. But it's such a great product. It's just rice and it's cooked with water. There's generally no added salt or any ingredients. It's just a great, easy to prepare whole grain. So we really love using it. And you can see the oil is definitely running faster down the pan. I hope you guys can see that. And I don't think it is shimmering, but I don't think the camera's picking it up. So shimmering just for me, I guess. Okay, so we're just gonna get started with this. We have all of our green beans going in. And like I said, I prepped some ahead of time, so that's why it looks like there's so many in here. We're getting that going. And I'm going to add in some slivered almonds. This adds great texture, a nutty flavor, really helps to tie in the nuttiness of the rice, a little bit of that mustard that's on the salmon. We have our remaining garlic I'm going to put in. You can hear that sizzle. That's what you want to hear. That's when the pan is hot. These are the sounds that you're looking for. And obviously it smells great. Olive oil and garlic is always such a good smell. Just want to bottle that up. Okay, and I'm just going to get this going until the green beans are a little bit tender. It's going to be like 2 minutes maybe. And if you don't have slivered almonds at home, that's totally fine. if you have whole raw almonds, you can use that, the knife the knife hack I was showing you with mincing garlic. Do that same thing, rock it back and forth through the almonds, and you'll sliver your own almonds. Sometimes they're not easy to find, or they're more expensive, and it's the exact same product, just cut. It's already cut for you. That's why they charge you more. So you can definitely DIY it. Also, and I'm just gently stirring it. You don't really have to hover. It's, you know, the green beans are pretty durable, so they're not going to like burn in 2 seconds. The nuts are something you want to watch out for. The nuts can toast a little bit quickly, but should be fine. And this recipe is great because you just, like I said, while the salmon's cooking, I think we probably have like 5 minutes left on the salmon. You make this and it's done. So it's not like you're waiting around for something to be done. You're not waiting for 10 minutes. It's totally quick and easy in that way. And it's really just one pan and one sheet pan. So not much cleanup. I used all the bowls just to show you guys what all the ingredients look like. But if I were just testing this recipe, I probably wouldn't use as many bowls. So very minimal cleanup for customers. Okay, I'm going to add our brown rice now. And this is frozen, so that's why it looks a little clumpy. And then to this, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of water. Like I said, what's traditional in a pilaf is cooking it in some type of broth or liquid. And so here we're using the water, which helps to make sure it's not dry, but also really just sometimes when you cook, some brown bits form on the bottom of your pan. And those are actually some of the most flavorful things that you can use. So when you sear a piece of chicken and that brown stuff gets on the bottom of your pan, you want to use that if you can. And the same principle here with our garlic, maybe some brown bits got on the bottom, that like caramelized garlic and the olive oil. So we're scraping that up with the water and tossing it all together. It smells so good. I'm just gonna let that sit for a second. I'm gonna season it with another 1/8 teaspoon of salt and some more black pepper. Don't mind my noisy pepper grinder. Clearly it needs a little refill. This is looking so good. It's the green beans are going to add that earthy flavor. They're bright and colorful. Garlic is delicious in anything. Brown rice is pretty, you know, it adapts to most flavors that you pair it with. But like I said, it has that kind of nutty flavor, chewy texture. And then with the squeeze of lemon over top for brightness, it's going to be so good. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn off this burner. I'm going to just relocate this for a second. And then we can plate our dish because my timer is about to go off in 50 seconds. So. Salmon looks and smells so good. You can see that mustard kind of made it almost like a little bit of a crust, and the pink color of the salmon is really coming through now. It looks really nicely cooked on the sides. Looks really good. Okay. Let's plate it. So whenever you're plating a dish, people say you eat with your eyes first. That is, there's my salmon timer. So you want to make your dish as appealing as possible. It's always nice after you've spent all this time making yourself a delicious meal to make it look nice too. So I'm going to put our green bean rice pilaf on the plate, and I'm putting it slightly off center. If you put it in the center and you plop your salmon on top, that's great too, but it adds a little bit more dimension if you put the base of your dish slightly off center. And then what we're going to do is kind of like prop the salmon up next to it. And we have left the skin on this piece of salmon. It's definitely, because it's on a foil lined baking sheet, it may come off a little bit, and that's okay. The salmon skin is definitely edible. It has the same nutrients and good stuff that your salmon fillet has. Some people like it, some people don't. So personal preference. So here I've kind of just propped the salmon alongside the green beans. I'm going to just shift it a little bit like that. And then you can top it with some more black pepper. Squeeze over my lemon wedge. And then I'm going to leave my lemon on the side just to make it look a little pretty. And there you go. There's our recipe. It's 12:34, probably took 25 minutes to do this from start to finish. So this is a recipe that you can order on season, you can enjoy at home. I hope you all learned some valuable things. And if there's any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat or write us any of your follow-up questions. And here's my face again. Were there any questions? I see there's one thing in the chat. Oh, Jess suggested anyone ask questions. Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for joining. And have a great day. Have a great Friday.
Thanks, Michelle.